Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and for this episode I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from Bavaria in Germany by Johanna Renoth. And thank you, Johanna, so much for taking the time to be here. I'm sure this is going to be such a wonderful conversation based on our previous conversations. And for everyone that is listening to us, who is Johanna?
Thank you so much, Brian, for having me on. And I'm very excited for this podcast because we were chatting away before we hit record. And at some point we remembered actually that we're here for a recorded conversation. So I'm looking forward to where this conversation takes us. And I'm, what do I do? I call myself an artist of life, mainly because I feel like, or I felt quite challenged by putting a label onto what I do so other people would know what to come to me for. And in my life, I've always had a big hunger for exploration. I've lived in many different countries. I wanted to learn all the languages, study all the subjects, try all the things. I've had many careers already because I had this hunger for exploration. And I, at some point, realized that what I do is really, in a way, when you think about a painter, their medium is painting, and for other people it's music. And I think for myself and for a lot of other people who might be a bit artistically inclined, but maybe not so good that they could actually, do the thing, or they're not brave enough for whatever reason you have. For us, there's this glorious thing, which is being an artist of life. So we create through the medium of life. And I always say I'm a multimedia artist of life because I create through my work, my love, my relationships, my passions, my explorations, through trial and error, through learning different things, through travel, whatever comes up. And in the end, all these things are little threads, some golden, some maybe mud colored, that weave the tapestry that is, in the end, my life. And I like that. I'm also, to be honest, I feel a bit naughty about this, that I'm getting away with this, but I've decided that that's going to be a thing.
Well, I think it's really interesting because, from what you just shared, and there's a couple of things that I think it's really interesting. One is how we see life. And a lot of times, to be an artist or to be someone creative. And on this podcast, we've talked in the past with some people that we touched on this topic, is that regardless of how, in a sense, good we are objectively with, if we are painters or we are sculptors or whatever medium we use, some of us that we don't have potentially that, we can still be creative, we can still be artists, and to be able to see the potential of using life as our canvas, and to be open to the experiences and to be open to exploring. Because and I want to ask you about this because it has been my experience. I have lived in many different countries. I have as well learned multiple languages. I have worked on a few different careers, and I'm relatively young still. And at one point I remember that someone said, from a work perspective or career perspective, it's no one is going to hire you for stuff, if you keep on going from place to place to place to place. And I'm why not? What's the mentality behind that?
Right.
Because it's kind of an old pattern, I think, and an old way of seeing things. Whereas for the younger generations, I think that this is our way.
Yeah, and I like that you're bringing this up because for I've heard similar comments for sure. People telling me, "Oh, you need to choose one thing, or you can't have your, this is my favorite thing. You can't have your cake and you can't eat it too." And I'm very much pro cake and pro eating it. I like to have both. And people were well-meaning people for sure, because I believe with giving advice, we tend to do it because we want to help or be helpful, or because it's worked for us, so we assume that it works for someone else. And I've heard the same thing, and I think up until this year, until this fall, I was very determined to draw my own box, and at the same time I kept having all these thoughts that, oh, but you've tried so many things and you've failed so often, but what's that going to look like? And I was a founder before. That was the sort of latest bigger chapter I had in my life. And then I wanted to be an executive coach to founders because I realized just how challenging it can be to start a business and run it. But I always thought, but well, if I do that, then I have to look serious. And I love skipping down the street, and I like dancing in the street, and I like, I'm not made to wear serious business outfits. I've never liked it. It can be fun to put on for play for a day, right? To sort of try on that role and see if it fits for you. But I'm not the person, I've never seen myself as the person who does that. So I always felt this clash of roles and perceptions of myself, but I want to do this thing, but all the other things I've done, will this be held against me? And how will this work all together? Until at some point, everything I was doing felt very heavy. And I don't like that, because when there's a difference I find between, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but it will make sense in a moment. There was this moment when a lot of the things I was doing felt really heavy. And it, granted, when we work, not everything, sometimes things aren't hunky-dory and not everything is sparkly and shiny, but even in the periods when I was doing things that were, as a baseline, I really enjoyed them, and some challenges were added on top of that, or you still have to do your taxes. I mean, I hate doing my taxes, but that's sort of part of the game, and you accept it because the bottom line is good, or you realize, okay, no, this is good for me. I enjoy doing this. And it wasn't like that. And when I went through that for several months at a time, thinking that I was doing the thing that I was, supposed to do and was enjoying with the whole coaching thing, I at some point woke up and I realized, oh, if it feels heavy all the time and everything feels like a chore, then I'm not doing something right. Because I really believe in play and things being light also. And I realized it was because I wanted to be very free in my mind about how I did things, but in the end, I had really boxed myself into a quite tiny box. And I realized I had to change things because I was limiting myself creatively, and I was limiting myself as a person in how I communicated, how I interacted with people, how I worked. And so it really also took unwinding all of the things that you mentioned of, oh, nobody's going to trust you, everybody thinks you'll have failed so often, and now that you've failed so often, you're going to teach people how not to fail. Like, what is that? And it really took me re-engineering that in my life and in my mind, and looking at it like something that actually is very enriching to have all these experiences at still a fairly young age. I'm in my early 30s still, and I've seen a lot. I feel like we're probably in a similar age bracket, and being wealthy in experiences in that sense, even though not all of those experiences might have worked out the way I initially wanted them, so it reads like this perfect success resume. I'm still glad I have those experiences, and I'm still glad I actually do have the wealth in those experiences, because that's something that's entirely mine. And it just, I think in the end, the thing I had to do wasn't that big. It was just really evaluating for myself which of the stories I was going to buy into and which of the stories I was just going to leave where they were and say, no, actually, that's not my judgment. It's society's judgment or somebody else's judgment.
Mm. Yeah, and I think, you touch on a few things that I want to expand on, and I think like one is failure. Like, what does that mean? Like, really? And I mean,
Yeah.
I understand how we use it and how like society uses it, but from my perspective, there's no failing. Like, there's only learning, and yes, you might not get to where you wanted to go in a certain if you created a goal and you didn't reach that goal, well, in a sense we would say you failed. On another
Mm.
hand, you could say, well, you learned that's not the way to do it, or that's not at that time, or whatever. And
Yeah.
as well, I think that like from a work perspective, especially for people, and this comes from my particular experience and with a lot of the people that I work with that have moved from country to country to country, like that means that you're going to work, like if you're working in a country and then you move countries, you're going to change work. So like if you see then like someone's, like my resume is like for a few years, like I had like different jobs, and it feels like I cannot keep I cannot keep one. And it's like, well, that's not true. I'm just deciding to have, as you say, experiences and to be able to explore.
Mhm.
And that is the other thing that I wanted to expand on, that is giving ourselves the potential to see how, like, we in this society, especially in the Western world, we are so much reliant on the money success or the financial success instead of as well, or or as well, to
Mhm.
having that experience. For me, I have done many things that didn't involve money. Like I have volunteered and lived in places where money wasn't even a thing,
Mm.
and still being able to have amazing experiences. And that is so enriching. And I think that's such a wonderful thing to be able to as well um, open ourselves up to the potential of seeing, what do I want to experience, not only how much money do I want to make or stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And so I love that you're bringing this up, this idea that we have about success, because I saw that when I was a founder myself, and I saw it a lot in the narrative that's out there on entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship seems to me right now is the really cool thing for our generation for a variety of reasons that I don't really care to go into what my theories on this. But it is the cool thing, and I think it's created this culture where we're really fixated on goals, and we're fixated on goals that are very visible on the outside world, having this many employees, having this much revenue, having being in Forbes magazine, all of these things. And I think to a certain extent, I mean, if somebody is really lit up by this, and I assume there are people who just love going down this path, this is great. But I feel like quite strongly actually that for a lot of people, the interests lie elsewhere, or they're not as determined to go down this route, but still try because it's sold as the ultimate thing and the ultimate recognition and validation. And I think the financial aspect is important insofar, because I sometimes feel a bit hesitant to say it doesn't matter at all, because it does, right? We live in a world that relies on money as a tool for exchange, and it is good to have financial stability, to
Mm.
know, that you can explore your creative inclinations, or you can explore in life knowing that you're safe, or you don't have to be worried about how you're going to pay the rent, or you have savings, whatever level of security it is that you need. But we've really neglected the other aspects of wealth, which is, as you were saying, wealth and experience, wealth and knowledge, wealth and relationships. And I also feel strongly about wealth and time. Do you actually have the time to enjoy all the beautiful things you have in your life? Because you often see this, it's this stereotype of the rich, successful person who's made it. They don't have any friends, their health is really terrible, they've sacrificed everything for work, and they have no time to enjoy it. And I feel like we've really gone astray there. And I would say, similar to what you've described, I've also had experiences where I volunteered. I remember when I was 19, I lived in a palm tree hut on the beach in Mexico for 3 months, and we didn't even have running water. And that was a valuable experience for sure. And at the same time, for a while, 2 years ago, between 2019 and 2020, I was training to be an investor. So I really saw this other side where we were constantly at events where people were talking about sums of money I'd never seen. I didn't even conceive, fathomable in my life. So, seeing those extremes has been really interesting. And I think that the key job that we have in our lives is really to be conscious and make a conscious choice about where we want to go with this, which path is right for us. And very often I see people not evaluating this and not making a conscious choice in either direction, and going into something that might not be healthy for them.
And this is something that I see, and of course with the work that I do, that I encourage people to see and to reflect on how are they showing up in the world, like how do they want to show up, what do they want to be doing, but also how are they being. And this a lot of times comes from like how are they responding to life and to life circumstances, what are they deciding to do, how are they deciding to spend their time, how are they deciding to connect with themselves, to others, are they doing any practices to develop awareness, or like, and this doesn't have to be spiritual at all, like it can be if one chooses, like me, but it doesn't need to be. It's about being able to be more conscious of how am I showing up? How do I want to show up? And that, I think that it's super interesting in terms of that. And I think that, and I can't remember like who wrote this quote that is something like, the world doesn't need more quote unquote successful people, it needs more like artists and healers and peacemakers and whatever, like something like that. And I always found that really interesting because, as you say, like we still live in this environment, and success is something that we all put our own spin on. What does it mean? I know that as a society, yes, it means more that money, house, things, whatever. But each of us can have our own measure of what success is. And I think that with stuff like that, and I see this in a lot of the spaces that I move around, especially around the coaching sphere. It's like this 6-figure or 7-figure and all of that. I'm like, oh, why? Like, like who like, is that something that really, and I mean, it does, like, but it's something really that people are looking towards as like the goal, or is that potentially, like, this is at least my approach, that might be a consequence of everything else that we do. Because if we are aligned, if we are doing what we want to be doing, my belief is that then we will receive that. So we will be able to actually have enough like abundance of resources, if that's monetary or some other way, it doesn't matter, because we are showing up how we want to.
Yeah. Before I respond to that, I have a question to you. What is your definition of success, or how do you feel when you think about you being successful?
Thank you for that. For me, success is about being able to be how I want to be, any single moment. And at some moments that means that might require to do some work for like to get a return, to be able to, as we talked before, like to pay rent and to pay my life expenses. But most of the time it is about having the freedom to spend my time how I want. And for me, like, that means that every day I have time to do my practice. I have time to make my own food. I have time during the weekend to go to the farmer's market. I have time to go and, like, whenever it's possible, to hang out with friends, to talk with my family. Like, that is my definition of success. And there's an element of money. Yes, like I choose to live in Auckland, in New Zealand, like in a city that is expensive in a sense compared to a lot of other places in the world that I could be living at, which means that financially I need to make enough money to be able to actually be okay here.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I actually do think that I don't just think it, I feel it, we're on the precipice where more and more people are really, I think especially the pandemic brought this out in a lot of people, where they're starting to question, but wait, what am I doing here? And with what you said around, especially the coaching industry and this whole idea of the 6 or 7 figure business, it's interesting because I could see this going either way. I feel like there could be an element where, to the extent that I would also be curious to have the experience of what it's like to, to have a business that generates X or Y revenue. Because to me, in my mind, it's a certain operation around it. And I would be interested, maybe that would be one angle where it would really work for me. I was like, I always have this thing like, I wonder what this is like. But it's also a pretty long-term experience. So I'm not very excited. I wouldn't be excited to commit to that. And I think also the thing about money is it's very relative, right? Where you are, maybe a 6-figure income is, or where I lived before in Munich, a 6-figure income is really a decent amount of money, but it's not that you're all of a sudden living, you're living life. It's not like that. You're living a decent life for sure. But you're not living the life. And in other parts of the world, now where I live in the countryside in Bavaria, 6-figure income is, especially when you're quite profitable as a company, is a lot of money, and you actually are living the life on that money, or especially when you consider maybe making 7 figures and owning your property. So I find, for one part, it's very relative, and that's always something that's pretty much bothered me about this whole thing about 6, 7, 8, whatever figure businesses, because it doesn't take into account the cost of living, for instance, for somebody where they are. And also, I think the biggest flaw in this whole idea is people want it because they think they will feel a certain way when they get to that goal, and they don't reflect, especially when it comes to money, how they want to feel, what things or the circumstances they would need in their life. Like you mentioned, having time for your friends, being able to go to the farmer's market, being able to do your practices every day, things like that. What that would mean in terms of how much time they work and what that would mean monetarily, the perfect sort of setup. I don't think people are doing that enough. And I also don't think we're having enough conversations around money like that, where it starts from, well, what do I need? What makes me happy, genuinely happy? And then maybe, you have a bit extra to give away, or to, make sure that you really have everything you need. So I feel like I also have a certain element of judgment around this rhetoric. So I'm not coming from a neutral place, to be honest. And at the same time, I feel like it's very challenging to disentangle turning coaching into a business like that, and at the same time being in service to people. It doesn't necessarily have to contradict each other, but I feel like when you are on the path of you really using it as a vehicle to generate, larger sums of revenue, you have to be very cognizant of the quality of the services you offer. And sometimes I feel like, and I would assume that this opinion is contentious, but I'll say it anyways, that there's not always value behind the offers being made where I feel like it's an equal exchange of money or resource or energy or whatever, is your reference point here, or where we are, the industry uses selling tactics that might get them the financial results, but aren't necessarily helping customers making a free choice.
Yeah.
And a a free choice in the sense of, that they're not subject to a variety of tactics like those countdown clocks, and you get like 500 emails in a day about signing up to something. To me, that's not a free. It's not a setup that necessarily honors the customer's free will, because when you get, I don't know if you've ever gotten anything like that, but when you get 10 or 15 emails from someone a day, you either just buy because you wanted to stop, or you unsubscribe because you wanted to stop. I don't know anybody who actually likes this stuff. I mean, maybe I don't know that type of person, but I don't enjoy it.
I think that, like, you bring up a lot of interesting points, because I think that, like, in a sense, I am part of this coaching space, because that's part of the work that I do, even though I don't like calling it like that, because what I do, I don't connect that much to that. I really like what you're doing, like with an artist of life and things like that. And
you can use it too.
Yeah, I mean, I usually, like, I tried to use, like, for a while, guide, and I figured, or I found that people didn't understand what that was, so I ended up calling it coaching. But I do think that something is really interesting in what you were saying, that, and I mean, we're all different and we all respond to things differently. I, like me, Brian, the way that I see life, my values, I don't like the tactics that a lot of times I was either encouraged to use to get clients, or that I've seen others, like, trying to get me to be a client. I don't appreciate a lot of those tactics that are fear-based, deadline-based, and that is putting a lot of pressure. Now, I see on the flip side of that, I see that there's a lot of people that would really benefit from having that guidance and that support, that if they didn't have those tactics, potentially they wouldn't have actually gone on board. So I see, like, and this is where this all balance. I see the like, for some people, this is really useful as a tactic to get them, like, over the hump, but as me to use it, I don't like it. And I think that, as you're saying, like, at the end of the day, as well, and this is where we each have our own understanding of boundaries and things. Am I trying to, like, make money as a coach, or or my aim as a coach or as a guide is to help people, and helping people as well, like, getting an exchange or a return from that as well to make a living. But where is the emphasis? Am I, and I think that as well plays a little bit in the space of coaching, from what I see. And the other thing as well is to be able to see what I'm doing as how am I helping my clients long term as well, not just now. Like, I've seen lots of coaches and quote unquote successful coaches that they burn out every few months, and I'm like, well, then all of the other stuff, then that was bullshit. Like, yes, you might have made for a few months, like, lots of money and had, like, hundreds of clients or whatever. Wonderful. I don't know, like, how good it was for all of the clients. But, I mean, it might have been amazing for all of the clients. But then this person is burning out, which means that there's something in the way that they are doing things that is not working. Similarly to what you shared at the beginning, that you were feeling that heaviness. It's like there's something that is out of alignment.
Yeah.
And there is this balance that we each need to go through, of understanding, like, how much do I want to push on this way, neglecting what my body's telling me, what, like, the amount of time that I need, the sleep, or lots of other things, to be able to make enough money or be quote unquote successful in whatever way we see that, and not saying like, I'm actually not going to put that much of my time into that, and I'm going to put more time for me or my well-being and my health, and or for friendships or whatever it is. And this is a completely personal thing, and we each choose. But as an industry, coaching, I think that it's a very interesting space because now it's booming so much. And I see it and like with some things, it's slightly dangerous, some of these ways that are being used.
I agree with you on that. I think you mentioned a lot of interesting things. I think when it comes to making money, especially as somebody who wants to help people, or we were also talking about being an artist or being a creative and making money. And I also, I am of the opinion that it's totally fine to make money, and for work that you're doing or for a service you're providing, or even if it's not one-to-one, because we also need more kind-hearted people who are resourced in this world, right? I feel like for a long time, people who cared about others had this implicit poverty vow that they can't, it's bad to make money when you're helping people or when you make something that's pretty or moving or anything like that. But as you were saying, there's a balance to be struck somewhere, and you can be so creative also with your business and how you structure your offers. If you have something low level that's accessible and something access to you personally can be more expensive, there's a lot of ways to do this, but yes, I think when you talk about those people who do all these launches and then they're burnt out, it does. I would also assume that there's something that's a bit off balance, because you need to make sure that you're also conserving, or you're managing your own resources in a way that supports you. So it seems like the structure is not supporting people that well, if that's the case. And because you also mentioned tricky things in the coaching industry, brief interlude question. Why are you not, what is it about the word coach or this concept of coach that makes it, sort of that you're hesitant to call yourself a coach? And I can share mine too if you want. It's not a one-sided question. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, that's good. It's just what I see that a lot of people in the space that I am believe that a coach is. And that's what I don't resonate with that. That's why I resonate more with like a guide or being of support. And if someone doesn't have that same meaning attached to coaching, then it's all good. But in the spaces that I am, that's the definitions that I don't resonate with.
Yeah, I think for me, it's some of the industry practices I'm seeing. It's so interesting because here in Germany, I actually did my certification through a university institute because I wanted to make sure that I was, very proper, and I had a, very good piece of paper with my qualifications attached to it. I think also that's because of the culture of the country I'm in. The certificate really matters. But people, when I told them I was training as a coach, there was a lot of people have this perception of the industry that it's a bit sleazy. And it's interesting because when you get that reaction time and time and time again, I know it didn't say anything about me, but I thought, oh, what's going on in this industry that people are, it's sort of, when you talk about the dentist, people will generally give you really similar reaction, like, oh, I don't like going there because it's usually not a pleasant experience. And for coaching, it was a similar dynamic where people would often elicit very similar opinions or experience, feelings around this. And I'm also hesitant, or I was hesitant to call myself a coach because I didn't see myself reflected in this whole like, oh, booyah, let's create an 8-figure business approach to it. And at the same time, there's this spiritual aspect of coaching that isn't quite the direction I saw myself going into. There's also there are different paths to take in this industry, and I didn't really, you could be a healer or a guide or a teacher, and none of these words really gelled for me. I feel like, especially with this past experience of calling myself an executive coach for a while, I've become very cognizant how important it is, the labels you attach to yourself, because it is what you are using to communicate to the world. Well, this is how I want you to see me. It's not necessarily how they see you. This is how I want you to see me, and this is what I want you to come to me for. And then there are some practices. I think it also depends on the cultural context a bit, maybe, but I really believe in guiding, coaching, inspiring people, whatever it is, in a way where you empower them and where you lead them to being able to gain more certainty in themselves and more certainty in their decisions. So for me, it would be impossible pretty much to tell somebody what to do. Or I would only, you could make suggestions maybe and look, from the outside, your situation to me, I perceive it as this. And if I may, maybe I feel like maybe in the coaching process is a very important word, because it gives people the opportunity to say yes or no, but you're more on eye level. But once you start telling people what to do, or being like, oh, you have to do this or you have to do that, and this is the way, and it's very simple, I see all these simple truths being, and I think social media doesn't necessarily help, because there's not a lot of room for nuance on social media. But these simple truths like, you just gotta, or do this, do that. I find this very challenging. I do it sometimes in my content for small things, or encouraging people, inspiring people, but I would never, in a session with a person, I would never tell them what to do. And I've had sessions where people did that, and for me, because they tried to help, and I found it very disorienting, because then you feel like you automatically have this hierarchy where you feel like, oh, the other person knows more because they're more experienced in this way. So obviously I must be doing something wrong, and I must be doing it their way because I already also paid them. So, and I paid them for a good reason, right? It becomes very complicated emotionally and cognitively. And that I think is one of the main reasons, is because I see a lot of well-meaning people and a lot of people who do great work in this industry. And I've also had experiences personally, and I saw it, where I feel like the difference between meaning well and doing something well became quite evident. So
yeah. Well, I think, there's something that you just said that I think is really interesting, is why are we going as people to hire someone as a coach or whatever they call themselves, a guide, an artist of life, or whatever. And for me, I see it as, for lots of things in my life, I have needed someone to help me to see things that I wasn't seeing, to hold me so that I could have more space as well, to create that space with me, like to hold me and to embrace me in a way, like, and I'm talking metaphorically here, to be able to do that which comes from me. And this is one of the things that I try to do with my clients, and this as well, for me, each person is different. Each person requires a different approach, requires a different way, it requires different words to be used, requires different times. For me, this is one of the things that as well, each of my clients, everything has been completely personalized for them. Like, I have never used a program that is like, okay, so it's A, B, C. So session 1, we're going to look at this. Session B, we're going to look into this. I understand the purpose of using a structure like that. Yet when I'm working with people, it's much easier to work with the person and to be able to support them in that way, and not to be able to get caught up with like, it really helps like if you write down this like 10 things like that, I'm like, well, perhaps that person doesn't like writing. Perhaps that person likes to do everything in their head. So, like being able to meet my clients where they are and to be able to support them in the way that they are wanting. And I think that is a really important thing in terms of understanding like why someone hires a coach. And it's like, what are you trying to get away from it? Are you trying to get marketing strategies to like further your business? Cool. Like, I mean, and that is part of the importance of this is like some of the tactics that I use or some of the types of coaches have to do as well with what are people looking for. And when someone is looking for, further in their business, cool. Like what they're looking is for someone that can teach them marketing strategies and sales strategies that potentially align with them. And with some other people, it's another thing. And I think that is really important in knowing from a client perspective as well from like a person offering the service, what's your way of doing things so that then people know more. Because for me, every time that I've had clients, like I have told people no because I feel like I don't resonate with them. So then it's like, well, I'm not the right person for them. They're not the right client for me. And if I would have thought from a financial standpoint, it's like, oh yeah, that's like a new client, and it's like, well, no, like that's just me. Like I don't feel like that, and for me, if I don't resonate, it's a no. So it's easy to be able to see it in that lens. But I think that, it's really important in this space to understand and how do we want to feel supported? How do we want to feel guided and not told what to do? And not like I'm not there as someone higher than my clients. Like also that's why I don't like a lot of times the word teacher, because the word teacher comes with, for a lot of people, this understanding of like I am above you. So it's like this power dynamic that is not like, I don't want that. So it's just like let's understand like what am I here to do, what are you here to do, and let's do that. So as well, like setting the rules of engagement, let's say.
For sure.
It's go ahead.
It's interesting because the way you described it with the teacher, for instance, right? I feel especially when it goes into the business coaching stuff, I feel like for some people or for some ways of doing this, a consultant might be a more appropriate term than coach, right? There's sort of the boundaries are very fluid. And there are situations where you might actually need a teacher because they've lived it, or you want the information, or you want specifically to have that situation where somebody quote unquote teaches you what they've learned. But that then again also to me isn't a coach. And maybe even just linguistically what people do, or sort of how you set boundaries around this field with adjacent fields like consulting, like teaching, spiritual guiding, things like that. It's, I think, very important, just like you said, to have those conversations with the people coming to you, and also to make sure it's a match. I've also said no to people because I felt like I wasn't the right person to help them. And I think especially when people are maybe in a situation where there are little, they're feeling desperate, or they're feeling they're very overwhelmed and they just want somebody to fix their problem, they might just grasp for the first type of straw or help they can get. And I would always, when now I do things a bit differently, but when I had calls to determine if we wanted to work together a bit more long term, I always told them, look, sleep on it, talk to other people, make sure that you're really on board with this choice. Because if you don't like me, or if there's something about me that you can't quite connect to, and then we go into this work and you might need to open up, or you need to hold space for you for something that might be challenging to process. Are you really going to do that? Are you really going to open up to a person who you have hesitations about? Or you just, it's nothing personal. It's just some people you get along with really well, and others you're like, you seem cool, but you're just not for me. And that's just the same thing with coaching. I've I'm trying I'm trying to resolve this a little bit by the secondary title I gave myself, which is agent of change and transformation, because change and inspiration, because I realize people tend to like to come to me for just getting the ball rolling. Really, we're sort of flicking the first domino together, and or if they need a space that's really non-judgmental. And I think that's sort of where, at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about all these experiences we've had and all the quote unquote failures we've gone through. And when you've seen life like that a bit, it's like, okay, well, I've seen a lot, and the thing that you're telling me about, that sounds really weird to you. Granted, I see you for that. I'm not invalidating your experience, but I can tell you're really fine. It's totally fine, and we can talk about how you can turn this into reality. And I like this twist I've given my work now, because it feels a lot more playful, and it doesn't have. I mean, basically, I've exited the conversations I had in my head around how I wanted to do coaching and why, and how the problems I saw with the field. It's just like, I'm just going to create my own box and end this sort of internal dialogue, because it was eating up a lot of mental and emotional energy. Because it's like, I don't know, do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I want to call myself this? Do I not? Blah, 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 blah.
Yes. Yeah.
You just got to choose the easy exit.
and not only that, like, it keeps on evolving and giving us the opportunity all of the time to keep on changing and to keep on like calling ourselves differently, or to offer something different. Like that is one of the things as well, that things don't need to be fixed, and we can try something and it's like, oh well, that like didn't feel right, or that didn't work from whatever like goals we had, or like anything. And seeing things as well from that open place, and to be able to be like, oh, this feels right, but potentially then people don't respond to that, and it's like, oh well, then that means that there's something that is still off. I don't know, like, I mean, it's just like a way of seeing things. And I would love to keep on talking for hours with you. I'm just aware, like, from this episode, like, let's like, I want to bring it towards an end by
Look, I can always come back.
Cool. But like, I wanted to ask you to share with everyone listening, and like, if they want to know a little bit more about you, if they want to potentially work with you or explore what you do, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, so they can find me. I have a website under my name, johannarenoth.com. And there are a couple of things I want you to do. So one is, I want you to sign up when you go there for my newsletter, because I write my newsletter when I feel like I have something sensible to share. And once a month, I write a reminder to chill to my entire mailing list. And it's usually just at the cusp of the new month. And I share, a couple of questions I'm asking myself. Usually there's a chill image, really relaxing countryside. And I do that because we get so busy that we sometimes just forget to take care of ourselves. And I'm just trying to give you a gentle nudge that it's totally fine. Even if in the past month it didn't work and you did a bit too much, you can always change. I love doing that. And then you can connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram mostly. I like that a lot because it's fun. It's a really visual medium. I've just started experimenting with TikTok, but I'm not so sure about that one. So please follow me on Instagram. Very old school. And you can work with me. I do these one-on-one sessions that I call an hour for change and inspiration. Just like I said, we can flick the first domino together on a change you need to make, or a creative project you want to start, or if you just need, especially for the situation where somebody might be like, oh, but I have this weird idea and I really want to try it, and it's been on my mind for half a year, but I feel like people are going to judge me for it. Then I'm the person to talk through with this. And I love doing that. And for some reason, anytime I traveled in my past, trains, buses, planes, I would so often, this type of person would just gravitate towards me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just something I radiate, but they were like, let me tell you about my life and everything that I'm not sure I want to do. And there's this idea and I want to rent a bus and do this and that. And so I'm just doing that for work now. And yeah, I think that's it. I also, on my Instagram, I update, I have this section where in the highlights where I talk about current projects that I'm doing, writing, or right now I'm trying to read stories for a sort of small Christmas album just for fun. But we'll see if it gets done in time, because I had a cold last week and I couldn't do it. So I'm always making and doing small things, and the best thing is just to follow me, or to subscribe to the newsletter and get the reminder to show.
Yes, and we will have that all as well, so in the comments, so that everybody has easy access to it. Thank you so much, Johanna, for taking the time for this wonderful conversation. As I said, I would love to have another conversation some other time and explore some of the other topics that we didn't get to. And for everyone listening, I would love to know, based on what we shared, especially perhaps if you're a coach or if you have done coaching, what's your experience been? Like, what do you see in this space? Like, I would love to keep on exploring this. I think it's a fascinating topic. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Johanna, one more time. And we'll see you everyone on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ, so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.